Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Lincoln Riley, USC landing another massive commitment coming out of the transfer portal as former five-star defensive lineman Keeshawn Silver committing to USC. From the sounds of it, this was USC's top target in the transfer portal. You're getting a really talented football player at probably the biggest position of need for USC heading into 2025. And where I want to start with Keeshawn Silver is this is a guy that provides a body type that USC just didn't have in 2024. And this is not a knock on some of the defensive linemen that were playing for USC during the 2024 season, but you look at some of the main contributors, Devin Tompkins, undersized defensive lineman, Gavin Mayer, Nate Clifton coming in through the portal. They gave USC a lot of solid snaps. There's no knock on those two and how they played in 2024, but they were not the biggest physically imposing defensive linemen that we saw. You look at G.D. Abasari getting a lot of burn as a freshman as well, still filling out that frame. Outside of Kobe Pepe, I don't know if USC was rocking with the defensive lineman on the inside that was over 305. Now you inject Keeshawn Silver, 6'4", 340, 7'1" wingspan. This is just a body type that USC didn't have in the Big Ten in 2024. And these are kind of body types you need in this conference if you want to win football games. I think the second storyline around Keeshawn Silver is this kid is extremely talented. There was a reason he was a five-star coming out of high school in the 2021 class. He's going into year 5. You're getting a solid football player. You go back to the film, especially his last 2 years at Kentucky, you say, yeah, Keeshawn Silver, that's a solid SEC defensive lineman. Can Coach Henney and Coach Nua, can you unlock this kid? Can you maximize the physical traits that he brings to the table? Because I think a lot of Kentucky fans would agree with this. You haven't seen a five-star defensive lineman the last couple of years, but that five-star defensive lineman is in there somewhere going into year 5. Coach Henney and all the development that he's shown, not only with guys on the USC roster going back to 2024, but during his career. Can you unlock Keeshawn Silver? Can you get a five-star caliber defensive lineman on the football field for USC in 2025? That's the conversation that I'm sure Coach Henney had with Lincoln Riley, and that's probably why they went all in on a guy like Keeshawn Silver. Coach Henney probably believes that there's another level for this kid to reach in the 2025 year. I want to get into a little bit more of Keeshawn Silver's game, talk about a few other storylines for USC out of the transfer portal. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the USC fans, it's been a roller coaster of the last couple of days. The vibes were low for a couple of days. The vibes are coming back up. These are the episodes that I love doing more than talking about the question marks around this program. Y'all rock with it, the highs and the lows. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Keeshawn Silver. As a Michigan fan, this was a top Michigan target in the transfer portal as well. So I've watched a lot of Keeshawn Silver. My take on him is he can kind of do it both for you. And it's hard to find defensive linemen like that. You look at Keeshawn Silver and say 6'4", 340. You can do a lot of that dirty work on the inside, winning at the line of scrimmage, eating up double teams, allowing linebackers to come downhill and really fit the run the right way. That stuff's important. It does not necessarily reflect in the box score, but it's reflective in terms of how good your team is stopping the run. I think he can do that because of his size and play strength. What's really unique about Keeshawn Silver is he's a pretty damn good athlete for 6'4", 340. He can get behind the line of scrimmage, create some negative plays, get after the passer. I think this is a guy that can reflect his dominance a little bit more in the box score than some other bigger body defensive lineman. And so you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a guy that can give you some juice in the pass rush, that can create some negative plays, but also do some of that zero tech dirty work that is meaningful and doesn't show up on the box score, but matters. So that's kind of what I like about Keeshawn Silver. And, there was a really interesting conversation about what this front is going to look like for USC heading into 2025. Yeah, Keeshawn Silver. You had a guy like Jakeem Stewart coming in as a freshman. Carlin Jones and G.D. Abasari are going into year 2. You start looking at Devin Tompkins, a guy that is getting better as a football player. The talent, I think, is getting better, but also that depth is getting there as well. And that was a huge concern for USC throughout 2024 is they just weren't all that deep. Guys like Nate Clifton, guys like Gavin Mayer, although Gavin Mayer was playing extremely banged up, was playing 40, 50 snaps a game at times. That's probably not what you don't want it to look like. And so now you start looking at the depth chart and saying, we got 5, 6, maybe 7 guys on the inside of the defensive line that we feel good about playing and playing some good reps for us. Not only the talent going in the right direction, but I think the depth as well. And that was the big concern for me going into the 2024 year for USC. I think another storyline that it's really easy to lose when you're talking about new additions is guys staying with the program, player retention. This one flew under the radar. Nobody really talked about it. It sounds like Emmanuel Pregnon is planning on coming back to USC in 2025. That's about as good of an interior offensive lineman as you could find in the transfer portal coming back to USC. So it's not a new addition to the roster, so to speak, but a guy that we expected to go to the NFL now coming back to USC. That's essentially a transfer portal win and a big one. That's just not going to get enough attention. And you talk about some of the question marks we had about USC on the offensive line, specifically on the inside, losing a guy like Jonah and potentially losing a guy like Emmanuel Pregnon. This goes a long way in kind of answering some of those questions that we had about the inside of the offensive line. The last thing I want to talk about, and kind of the main thing I wanted to talk about, was, Lincoln Riley was really transparent, is probably the word I'd use, in his press conference after the practice yesterday, getting asked about Zachariah Branch. And he was like, hey, it essentially is like a salary cap. We have a certain amount of funds, and we have to, as coaches and as a staff, determine where we want those funds to go to create the best football team heading into 2025. And, I think we all knew how much resources were going into a guy like Zachariah Branch, especially after the year that he had as a true freshman. And let's be frank, Zachariah Branch as a true freshman looked like he was going to be a weapon for USC over the next couple of years. But the fact of the story was that pure wide receiver development from year 1 in 2023 to year 2 in 2024 just didn't happen. And so if Zachariah Branch is asking for the same compensation as he was 12 months ago, and we thought this kid was a budding superstar, that kind of we all knew who he was talking about when he was going through this, and it kind of clicks. And it's like, look, Zachariah Branch is a really talented football player, but year 2 was not really the jump we all expected. He even kind of appeared like he lost a step with the football in his hands as well, and certainly didn't progress as a pass catcher like we thought of. If you were to rank the USC wide receivers, it'd probably start with guys like Bakai Lemon and Jacoby Lane. And so I think what USC did was, hey, we want to make sure we take care of the wide receivers that seem to be the guys for us moving forward. And it's not that we don't want Zachariah Branch on the football field or on our team, because he's a very, very exciting talent. But at the same time, you got to have that conversation of, hey, if some other program is willing to pay a little bit more for you, you don't want to overpay for a guy that didn't really take the step that you wanted at the wide receiver spot. And you probably say the same thing for his brother Zion, who are coming out of high school, bona fide top 100 national prospect. And with the injuries that he sustained over the first couple of years of his career, wasn't really playing like the guy we thought we were going to get out of high school. And so it's easy to be an outside observer. And I probably am a little guilty of this as well. I'm looking at like, holy smokes, this is not great. Where it's like Lincoln Riley was pretty transparent, saying we just were making decisions that we think best benefit this team. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Zachariah Branch transfers out and certain NIL resources that were going to him, and then you go land a former 5-star defensive lineman in the portal in the next 48 hours. I don't know if that's exactly a coincidence. So that's kind of my take. I think on the outside, it's sometimes easy to panic when you're seeing some guys leave the program. I think now it's going to be the vibes are going to slowly get back up, because now the players who are going to leave left. Now you're going to start adding some really good players to this program, most notably a guy like Keeshawn Silver. That's kind of my take on it. Would love to hear from the USC fans in the comment sections as well. A lot of different ways you can look at this program right now. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. And it's not I don't want to be act like I think it's perfect right now. Like there are some things that USC needs to clean up, but there's also some stuff that you probably don't need to panic as much as what you've seen on some of the message boards and Twitter. My take on it, again, a lot of ways you can look at it. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.